Hi students, this is Mrs. Guido. I'm going to read aloud our reading for tonight on historical sources, and then you'll work to complete the questions for Core Concepts 1.2. Core Concepts 1.2, Historical Sources. Two key ideas from this reading, one being historical sources can provide important information, and another, historians must evaluate the accuracy and reliability of sources. Some terms in our reading today: primary source, artifact, secondary source, and bias. Historians try to accurately understand and describe the past. To understand past events, historians study historical sources. Primary and secondary sources. A primary source is information that comes directly from a person who experienced an event. It consists of what the person writes, says, or creates about the event. Primary sources include letters, diaries, speeches, and photographs. Artifacts are also primary sources. An artifact is an object made by a human being, such as a tool or a weapon. We use primary sources to understand events from the points of view of people who lived at the time in which they happened. Books, articles, movies, and other sources that describe or make sense of the past are secondary sources. A secondary source is information about an event that does not come from a person who experienced that event. On the left-hand side, we see a poster, an American poster, and it says, "This U.S. poster created during World War II is an example of a primary source." Another primary source we see at the bottom of that page. Letters written by soldiers are a primary source. We see on the right-hand side a quote, "Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a day which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated or planned invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory." And this was from a speech from President Franklin D. Roosevelt on December 8th, 1941. The next page, evaluating historical sources. Historical sources do not always give a true account of events. Even primary sources can be wrong or misleading. An author's personal opinions may have influenced what he or she recorded. Sometimes the author may not remember the event accurately. A historian must decide what, if anything, to trust in a primary source. A historian must also be cautious when using secondary sources. Not all secondary sources are equally reliable. For example, the internet includes millions of well-researched articles, books, and other reliable secondary sources. However, any internet search will also find many inaccurate websites. Historians and students of history, like you, must evaluate a source to determine its reliability. When you examine primary and secondary sources, ask yourself questions like these. Who created the source material? A witness to an event may be more trustworthy than someone looking back at the event from a later time. However, a scholar or a publication with a good reputation is also a reliable source. For example, a college professor who specializes in Chinese history would be a reliable source on China. Another question to consider when you examine sources: is the information fact or opinion? A fact is something that can be proved true or false. An opinion is a personal belief. Opinions are valuable not as a source of facts, but as a clue to the author's judgments or feelings. Another question to consider when you're evaluating sources: does the material seem to have a bias? A bias is an unfair preference for or dislike of something. Biased material often leaves out facts that do not support the author's point of view. On the bottom, we see in the caption, the painting and article below are secondary sources. Secondary sources, and this is from a textbook. Japanese planes attacked the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7, 1941. This disaster caused the American public to support an immediate American entry into the war. And that's from the textbook, History of Our World, Prentice Hall, 2008. Now please use this text that we just read together to answer your Core Concepts 1.2 questions for homework. Have a good night.